The recent city budget has ignited debate about spending, perceived waste, and the city's financial health. Some argue that the city of Winnipeg should be run like a business, adjusting spending and increasing revenue to avoid financial trouble. While this analogy holds some truth, it oversimplifies the complexities of city governance and the fundamental differences between a business and a municipality.
The core differences lies in their responsibilities. A business can close, scale back, or take on debt. Cities, however, must provide essential services like snow removal and garbage collection, even if they don't produce revenue. They simply can't just shut those services down. While they both can face financial difficulties, a city will continue to exist, but with severely compromised services.
Cities operate more like nonprofits, providing city services like parks, libraries, and transit, which a profit-driven business might seem discretionary.
Per the provincial charter, it's illegal for the city of Winnipeg to have an operating deficit. That means each year the city needs to figure out how to not spend more on its operating budget than it receives in revenue. Now, when inflation or tariffs increase our costs, the city needs to act immediately to rebalance the budget. And they have two ways to do this. They can increase taxes or cut services.
Of these two choices, Winnipeg has historically chosen to cut services. This is demonstrated by the property tax freeze from 1998 to 2012 and below inflation increases since. This is partly why we're seeing pools close, bridges fail, infrastructure crumble, and valuable community services scrapped. Increased taxes wouldn't necessarily create a surplus either. The funds would be reinvested in services or allocated to future maintenance and capital projects. Furthermore, simply raising taxes while reducing services is politically unpopular. There have been calls by delegates at City Hall to cut more services, freeze city staff wages, and address perceived wasteful city spending, such as maintaining flower pots.
One is, and you've heard me talk about this before, there are 1,631 flower pots in the city.
While some of these cuts might reduce the deficit in the short term, residents rely on these services, and the city needs to offer competitive wages to attract talent. The amount of money this would save the city to put into other services is in the low millions, or less than 0.3% of the $2.1 billion city budget. While that's not insignificant, it's not remotely enough to start tackling the root causes of Winnipeg's financial issues.
Debating about which city services to cut is a symptom of a much larger problem that Winnipeg faces. Winnipeg has more future liabilities than it has in revenue.
For one example, back in 2018, the city released the State of the Infrastructure Report, which showed that Winnipeg had 7,335 kilometers of roads and bridges with a replacement cost of roughly $15 billion. We have more roads now than we did in 2018, and with inflation, we can reasonably assume this figure is now over $20 billion. If we put all of our roads in Winnipeg back to back, you could cross the entire country from coast to coast. The city's 2025 budget allocates roughly $166 million annually for the next 6 years to renew roads. However, given the average lifespan of a road is around 25 years, and assuming the city needs to replace all of its roads eventually, this funding would require well over a century to achieve that goal. Okay, great. We can find some services to cut to fund our roads, right?
The problem is that if we want to replace all of our roads when they're needed, we would need to be spending $600 million more per year than we're spending now. We could raise our taxes further, but raising our property taxes by 80% just for infrastructure maintenance isn't viable. These calls for cuts are ignoring a crucial question. How much do we realistically need to pay for all the services and infrastructure we already have?
This is one of the reasons our streets are falling apart. To put it simply, we've built more than we can afford to replace with our tax base. This is just roads and bridges. What about water treatment plant upgrades, pools, libraries, and combined sewer separation? If we've seen record levels of population growth, why have we not seen a corresponding increase in tax revenue to support our city? We've been trying the same thing for decades, and it's getting worse. It's time we try something new by shifting our growth strategy. We need to ensure our tax base can support our future liabilities while providing stable city services. This can be achieved by reinvesting in our existing communities, efficiently using our existing infrastructure, land, and not building more before we can pay for it. This can effectively be achieved through modest density, infill, mixed-use neighborhoods, and more efficient transportation options, such as public transit. Don't take my word for it. Calgary, Edmonton, and Minneapolis, among many others, have started to see positive changes by doing the same thing. Winnipeg doesn't need people on council to run it like a business. We need people who understand the complexities of what a city truly is and where real impactful efficiencies can be realized, rather than focusing on flower pots. A business can focus on quarterly profits. A city must think in decades and take care of its residents with quality city services.